Hi, and thank you for joining me for another video. And friends, this week's Parsha is Parashat Vayishlach. And friends, in this Parsha, the Torah is still in the process of describing the life and trials of Yaakov, to the point that these two last Parashiot have taken us from immaturity to strife to finally adolescence. And friends, anyone who has followed the narrative carefully till now would have seen how Yaakov did not have a free ride, and how he had to suffer and pay for everything he's acquired thus far. Now, this is very interesting because at least the majority of the midrashic sources that have survived till today focus actually on the opposite, many devoting their rhetoric and outcome on the spiritual consequences of supposedly purchasing a silly birthright, completely overlooking the ethical narrative and the ethical theme of the story, which, if you think about it, is the only way to understand Torah. Not trying to make every disaster into a triumph or every bad action into a good one, but to see these individuals, in this case Yaakov, for who they really are, perhaps as the possible you, making all these mistakes so that you won't have to. The problem, my friends, is that in today's world, we want our heroes to be sinless. We want them to be everything we are not and everything we could never become. But my friends, not in this book. No, this is a real book, my friends, for real people with real problems looking for a real applicable solution. In other words, no one in our Torah takes the world's problems and resolves them in one generation, nor does the text imply anyway that there is some quick fix for anyone's life. No, friends. Everything and anything that our biblical heroes accomplished was solely due to their constant daily struggle against the natural and their persistence in pursuing the ethically divine. And this, my friends, is where we find ourselves today in this Parsha, that begins describing Yaakov as a man forged through trial and error, who paid dearly for everything and who only later in his life found his way. As a matter of fact, it's not a coincidence that the Torah chose to closely describe the lives of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov as a precursor to receiving the Torah, reminding us that man is weak and predisposed to fail, no matter who they descend from or who ends up descending from them, and that the only hope for humanity was for goodness to finally be codified once and for all, for the keys of success to be attainable by anyone willing to submit to the greater will of the Almighty. The will codified in an instructional form later known as Torah, which, if understood properly, destroys any later notion that there are any quick fixes in this world, or that anyone could rely on anything other than the effort that they put in to making this world a better place. Whether it's believing because you descended from X, you deserve Y, or by believing that one man paid the price for you on a cross, or believing any other stupid notion antithetical to this Torah. No, friends, effort, free will, and hard work is how things got done in Torah, no matter what anyone may have told you. In simplest terms, my friends, there are no free rides. And we could even see that Yaakov himself knew it, as described in the beginning of this Parsha, because it states that when it was time for Yaakov to confront his brother Esav, Yaakov's attitude was one of remorse and humility, in some way an attempt to undo what previously happened. Here in the beginning of the portion, Yaakov agrees to tell his servant, to tell Esav that he is his servant and that Esav, as his older brother, is his Lord. Which should make us question how valid was the birthright scam in the first place. And we also mustn't forget that his father Yitzchak was also not convinced by it. No, friends, remember, like we just said, that this Torah gives no one a free ride. So for someone to erroneously assume that the reason Yaakov acts in such a manner is because of fear, they would also have to assume that the Almighty was also afraid in some way, because as the narrative explains, that it was he who helped Yaakov come to this conclusion. In other words, if this is what Esav got, it's because this is what Esav deserved. And not only did the Almighty know it, but Yaakov knew it also. To the point that this was proof that Yaakov finally passed his test, that he finally overcame his obstacle, because immediately after Yaakov instructs his servant regarding Esav, does Yaakov confront the angel of God, who then changes his name to Israel. Can it really be a coincidence? And friends, it's also no coincidence that the Almighty calls Yaakov Israel, meaning one who struggles with the Almighty. Why? Because this is the status of all of us who on a daily basis have to struggle to manufacture ethical fidelity. to that greater truth and the greater cause of bettering the world, which is why the notion has never left my mind from the first time I read this Torah, that the job of Israel was to make this world Israel. That when the prophet states that we're to be a light, it's just like Mishlei states that the Torah is that light and the mitzvot are the candles. Are you beginning to catch the vision? One God, my friends, with one people made up of all races. What a powerful idea. And then, friends, the portion goes on to describe the meeting between Yaakov and his brother Esav. And at the same time brings down a principle we must never forget. And that's that only because someone is not in the covenant does not necessarily make him or her immoral or unworthy of kindness. As we can see when Yaakov confronted his brother Esav, that although he was willing to give him the shirt off his back, he was not willing to go with him. Which is really the attitude we should have with the outside world, which is something many in the religious world find too difficult to balance, assuming that because they are with X that they should automatically hate or disassociate themselves from Y. Not at all, my friends. Actually, not only is it not the way goodness is formulated, but if those who are ethical in the world took such a stance, by definition, the world would never improve. And I really think that this is one of the main areas that the Jewish world fails in the most nowadays, and that's in the area of confronting or even relating to others. In other words, the only time you hear a collective statement uttered by the Jewish people nowadays to the non-Jewish world, it's typically a statement always uttered out of fear or defense, typically saying something like, we just want to be left alone, and how we respect all peoples and all beliefs. However, friends, this is not how the Torah teaches us to relate to the outside world, as clearly described even in this Parsha, on how we saw that even though Yaakov feared for his life, it never crossed his mind to try to bribe his brother, to the point that we even see that the gifts were the angel's idea, an idea that Yaakov clearly condoned, because we even see him giving more than the angels suggest. And the question we should really ask is, why did he choose to give more? And this, my friends, really brings down yet another principle that we must never forget. And that's that acts of goodness, when not owed to someone, should always be used as a tactic to bring others to the truth. And if you think about it, it could even work the other way around also. In other words, the same could be said for when we have to hurt someone's feelings. A notion almost antithetical to the Jewish world today, that something can only be said as long as no one gets hurt. This, my friends, are not the words of the godlike, but rather just the commentaries of the weak and the victimized. No, my friends, don't get me wrong, I don't like to hurt people's feelings either, but that doesn't mean that sometimes their feelings don't deserve to be hurt for some greater good. To the point that even our sages said in Kohelet Rabbah that those who are kind to the cruel will eventually end up being cruel to the kind. A statement one would have to believe that the Torah did not adhere to here if you think that Esav did not deserve such kindness. And what's that greater good, friends? Friends, that greater good is undisputedly, according to this book, peace. A notion that only a world living by Torah could facilitate. And then, friends, the Parsha, as a further confirmation of Yaakov's maturing, has the Almighty bringing him back to Beit El, the same place he initially spoke to him, so that we, the reader, could see how far he's come. And the transformation, my friends, is astonishing, because this time, once Yaakov realizes what has taken place since the last time he was here in the previous Parsha, he does something that everyone blessed by the Almighty should also do today. And what's that? My friends, he instructs all those around him to get rid of their idols and present themselves properly before the Creator of the world. And friends, if you think this is equivalent to Jews nowadays thinking that they're only obligated to offer the world 7 primitive laws instead of calling them also to give their best, friends, you have not begun to understand the will of the Almighty as described in this Torah. And friends, if you're hearing me today and you also want to begin giving the Almighty the best you can give, I want to welcome you to consider converting to Judaism and living by the Almighty's final instructions for humanity. For more information on converting to Judaism, please visit doordea.com or bejewish.org. Thank you.